Hello, I'm ABC7 News anchor Reggie Akey. Joining me today, fellow San Franciscans with questions for the candidates for mayor. We have Annie Gauss, who's senior news editor covering business and politics for the San Francisco Standard, and Kara Swisher, an author, journalist, and host of the podcast On with Kara Swisher. We invited each of the leading candidates to answer questions that'll help build a better Bay Area. And joining us now is Daniel Lurie. Daniel, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
Annie is going to have the first question for you.
Okay.
Hi. As mayor, you would be in charge of a massive organization that has 35,000 employees, dozens of different departments, commissions, and a board of supervisors you'd have to work with, and a budget of $15 billion. Your prior job, you ran a nonprofit called Tipping Point. You were in charge of a few dozen employees. I think your budget was in the range of $50 million in the last time you were CEO. So, as your critics have said, this is not an entry-level job. And what exactly in your background has prepared you for a job that is, I think it's fair to say, an order of magnitude more complicated than what you've done in the past?
I appreciate the question, Annie. I have a long history of getting big things done for San Francisco. I've worked with every mayor since Mayor Newsom through to this one, not only starting one of the largest, most innovative poverty-fighting organizations in this country. Mayor Ed Lee in 2013 saw my ability to bring civic leaders together, business leaders together, and asked me to chair the bid to bring Super Bowl 50 here, a global sporting event. It wasn't because I was a sports guy, it was because he knew that I could deliver, and we did. We brought a global sporting event, $240 million of economic revenue. I worked with Mayors Liccardo in San Jose, Mayor Schaaf in Oakland, Mayor Lee here in San Francisco, and we created a blueprint that now we have 3 global sporting events coming here over the next 24 months. Super Bowl is coming back, World Cup is coming here, the NBA All-Star Game is coming in February to Chase Center. $1.4 billion of economic revenue. I'm the only person in this race that's also gotten housing built, shelter built. I've housed over 40,000 people since 2015. I know how to get big things done, and the key component of all of it is holding people accountable. If you want more of the same, you got 4 other people to choose from. If you want something different, if you want change in this city, I'm here for it.
Why not? I mean, I'm curious, why not just start with the Board of Supervisors or the Board of Education? Or, that's kind of historically how people cut their teeth in politics here, and it would probably cost a lot less money to run a campaign for Board of Supervisors. So why go straight to mayor?
Because the city needs change, and we cannot afford another 4 more years of these City Hall insiders that I'm running against. They have experience. It's just the wrong kind of experience. I have delivered, once again, on so many different issues, whether it's housing, whether it's education and employment. Annie, I'm in this race in the truest sense for public service, not for personal profit or personal gain, but to turn around the city that I know all 3 of you love and that I love, and I know your viewers out there desperately love. And I'm running against people that have had their chance and they have not delivered. In fact, they've failed. We are now a city and residents that when we travel, and Kara, I know you travel and you back and forth, you got to defend San Francisco. It's a shame. It's a crisis on the streets. We have a behavioral health crisis. We have a property crime crisis. This mayor has been in office for 12 years. So it's not about whether or not I have City Hall experience. It's about whether or not I have the right experience, and I do have the right experience to lead this city at this moment.
Something you just said to Kara, I want to follow up on, because this keeps coming up with multiple candidates, and that is this idea of defending San Francisco. I'm curious, when you are traveling and you are in that position, like we've all been, to defend San Francisco, what is it that you say?
Well, right now, I haven't traveled much over the last 12 months. I've been working on this campaign so hard in every corner of this city, but I say San Francisco will be back. There's not a question in my mind. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think that San Francisco's best days are ahead of it. I am so optimistic about our future. Every day, I'm seeing business owners, I'm seeing entrepreneurs who love this city. And actually, I was at the night market on Irving Street a couple of nights ago, and this woman came up to me. She's born and raised here. She's got a young baby, and she's like, Daniel, I was born here. I don't think I can stay here. I love this city, but the city doesn't love me back. And that hit home for me. We need a city hall that loves its citizens, that takes care of its taxpayers and its residents. And I am committed to making sure that City Hall works for the people again. My administration, every one of my department heads is going to be accountable to the people and to me. And I tell people San Francisco's coming back.
But do you have you've run a nonprofit, which is like running a business, and you have to have a business plan.
Yes.
So your business plan says, in how many years does San Francisco come back? Because if you're going to say more than 8 years, that's more than the time that you have.
Great, I appreciate it. So what I've told people is give us 18 to 24 months, and we're going to call our friends in the East Bay and then the South Bay and Marin and say, hey, come in, come shopping with us. Come out to get a meal and let's go see a show at Golden Gate Theater. And they'll say, okay, I'm coming. Right now, you tell people come in downtown Union Square, go see a John Mulaney show. No, I'm not doing it. Give me 2 years on that. 8 years after I'm done with 2 terms. And by the way, I've made this pledge to a rabbi, a priest. I am not running for anything in Sacramento or DC. I just want to turn around the city that I love. And 8 years from now, artists, creatives, business leaders are going to be like, I got to be in San Francisco.
So you're saying 18 to 24 months? Is that what you're saying?
18 to 24 months where we get our locals saying, I want to go back into San Francisco, give me 2 terms, and everyone around the world's going to be like, San Francisco's back.
Okay, we have that on tape.
Yes.
So that's sort of a trope of San Francisco, the boom and bust trope, you know, that it's going to, and I don't think coming back is sort of another trope. The idea of it, when you think about what's right with San Francisco, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, and then I have a second question. You're by far the wealthiest candidate, and that's, people think about that. Why do you think you're in a position to meet the needs and challenges of people who are struggling here, these people that aren't loved?
Well, we do have green shoots, and when I think of great parts of San Francisco, I think about our arts and our culture. I think about our parks. India Basin is a park that I'm really excited about going up in Bayview, Hunters Point. It's going to be a park that rivals Christie Field. And I can't wait for it to open. I was involved in that in its early days, stepped aside during the campaign to keep politics out of it, but really excited about that. I'm excited about some of our neighborhoods we're seeing coming back. North Beach is doing really well. Kara, as you brought up, I am somebody that has committed his entire career to serving community, serving San Francisco and the entire Bay Area. With Tipping Point, Super Bowl, we made the most philanthropic Super Bowl of all time. We made sure that 25% of every dollar that we raised from corporates went back into the community, $13 million. I've worked in every corner of this city, was not out beating my chest saying, look at me, for 20 years. And now when you run for office, you got to say what you're up to. But I have to tell you, I'm never going to say I can put myself in somebody's shoes, but I'm going to walk alongside people every step of the way. And if a door has been opened to me in my life, I've always brought as many people through those doors as possible, whether it be through Tipping Point, whether it be through Super Bowl, whether getting housing built on Bryant Street on time and under budget, good paying union labor. I'm going to continue to do that as your mayor.
Do you think your wealth is a negative? I mean, for example, with schools, how can you, for example, as a mayor, make people feel better about putting your kids in public schools? Your kids are not in public
They go to private school. We made that decision. We have friends that have the means to send their kids to private school and chose public school. And I understand people want to ask me about that, and I respect that. You know, we have an incumbent who talks about her experience going to public schools. And all I say is, how are our public schools doing? They're not doing well. We've had such bad leadership at the school district for so long now. The dysfunction is crippling our public school system. What I've said about our public school system is every single day from the tops of the City Hall steps, I'm going to talk about student achievement and student outcomes, focused on our students, making sure we pay our teachers on time. There's still teachers as of a week or two ago that hadn't gotten paid in the first 6 weeks of school. The mayor, with 40 days left, came in and said, I'm going to come save the public school district. Well, why didn't she do that 2, 3, 4 years ago? And so I am proud of my track record of pushing for education, early childhood and K through 12 over the last 20 years, and I will continue to lead on that.
What would it take to put your kids in public schools? I just put my kid in public schools.
My daughter's actually looking at high schools right now. She's looking at a couple public high schools, Lowell, Soda, and we'll see. Whether or not where my kids go to school or not, I am going to be a mayor that is focused on making sure that we have world-class public schools again.
And what's the one thing you could do to do that?
Surge resources from my other departments that I do control. Department of Children, Youth and Families has hundreds of millions of dollars that we could surge resources to. So the schools, Kara, aren't just looked at as a place for teachers and students, but parents, where parents can get CalFresh, they could get Medi-Cal, they could get mental health counseling. I did something similar in Bayview with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. We launched a pediatric clinic after she told me there was one pediatrician for 10,000 kids in Bayview Hunters Point. We got a pediatric clinic set up, and we surged resources to that community. We not only had a pediatric clinic, we had mental health, we had child abuse prevention services. We teamed up with UCSF and Katie Albright, and we created something called the Center for Youth Wellness. I'm going to do something similar around those public schools that need our help.
You ran a nonprofit called Tipping Point that in 2017 you teamed up with the city and announced that you were going to cut chronic homelessness in half over 5 years, and you committed $100 million to this effort. 5 years later, the number had actually gotten worse. The number of chronic homelessness had actually, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, went up from 2,100 to 2,600. So what did you take away from that experience, and how could you convince voters that this time would be different with vastly more resources, their taxpayer dollars, that you would have to work with?
Annie, I don't want to dispute, we did not hit our goal, but it was decreased by 13%, and that is evident by all the facts. You're taking talking points, understandably, from my opponents. I appreciate that.
No, that was from a San Francisco Chronicle story.
Well, I'll make sure. Anyway, the point is we have a lot of work to do. I'm not going to challenge that at all, but we had a lot of successes in the project. We did not hit our goal. We want to make sure that people know that we got housing built on time, under budget, with good paying union labor at 833 Bryant Street. It took 3 years, $377,000 a unit. Compare that with the city doing a similar project, 7 years, $1.2 million. The project was so successful, despite some critics, all of whom using the same talking points that they used about shoddy construction before the building went up. It was built by Cahill Construction, Mercy Housing, some of the most reputable firms. My opponents who are attacking the project have actually never visited the project, and it is being replicated at 1633 Valencia Street. We're going to build 135 units of affordable senior housing using the same process and model as we did at 833 Bryant. So we did it once, we're doing it a second time, and it means that we can do this over and over again to get more housing built for our teachers, for our nurses, for our firefighters, for those young families. What I'm proud about the project is we went after an audacious goal. We really wanted to go big. We didn't hit it like we'd like to, but we kept thousands of people from falling into homelessness. Since 2015, Tipping Point has actually housed 40,000 people at a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost it takes the city. You know, some of my opponents have rubber stamped over $450 million worth of grants of taxpayer dollars to housing and homelessness groups with no oversight, no accountability. I am proud of our record of holding nonprofits accountable, cutting funding to groups that aren't performing, and getting resources to those that are high performing.
I'm wondering, though, if you think that we're at this point over our head. We have been, and you are the only person who's run a nonprofit that is dedicated to homelessness. So you're the expert. At this point, and I'm not talking about just your nonprofit, I'm just talking about the city in general. Yes. At this point, we spend so much money on this issue, and this has been going on for so long. And it seems like we just chip a little bit away at it every year. And then, you know, there's another catastrophe like a drug overdose crisis that's currently on the streets, which sets us back years again. At this point, do we need more help than the city can really provide and to solve this?
We can't do this alone. We need state and federal support. We passed a $6 billion bond on the March ballot, which allows us to go get more mental health and drug treatment dollars. We need to stand up more mental health and drug treatment beds. And we have to get people off the street and into treatment. We need to pull our police officers back from being the first responders to somebody who's in the throes of crisis, of mental health or drug addiction. I want trained clinicians going out first, bringing people into a 24/7 crisis center, and then deploying them to beds, detox beds, step-down beds, programs like Salvation Army's The Way Out program.
And where does the money come from for that, to have those trained clinicians out there?
It comes from Prop 1 bond money, $6 billion worth bond. Let me just be clear. We don't have a crisis of resources in our city. We have a crisis of leadership. We are spending $700 million a year on behavioral health services. We skewed so heavily towards harm reduction, keeping people alive, safely using drugs, but that became the whole plan. And what we need to do is make sure that we have the continuum of care built out. And this mayor and this Department of Public Health forgot about that the point of getting people off the streets is to get them into recovery. And we can build and stand up those beds. We have the resources with the $700 million, but we need more trained clinicians. We can use city money, we can use state money, and we can use federal money. We've just done a poor job of spending.
One of the things you'll be facing is a budget deficit because of the departure of businesses from the city. You obviously interacted with a lot of wealthy people doing Tipping Point. Every event I went to was a multi-billion-dollar affair, essentially. But how do you get those companies, especially the tech companies, which are sort of ascendant right now? Meta, Google, Block have reduced their space. Other employers like X have left the city entirely. Now that's a different story, but nonetheless, how do you recoup lost tax revenues and attract new businesses to the city if you want to do these kind of things? One of them would be safety, presumably, the idea that they can live here comfortably. But should the city be offering incentives to major employees, or is that a gimme to wealthy people?
Kara, we need clean and safe streets. That's why I've said my top priority is public safety. Nothing else matters if we don't keep people safe, we don't keep downtown safe. So I've said that from day one. The second priority is the mental health and drug crisis on our streets, especially downtown, but also in our neighborhoods. So we have to get people off the streets and into care. And I'm going to send a message every day for as long as it takes to set in, so people hear across the country and across the world, that you don't come to San Francisco to deal drugs, you don't come here to do drugs, and you don't come here to sleep on our streets. I've talked about developing a San Francisco Downtown Development Corporation. It's going to be modeled after what they did in Lower Manhattan after 9/11. It's going to be a quasi-public-private entity with business leaders, civic leaders, and people from my administration to make sure that we recruit and diversify what we have downtown. Kara, we know this. People want to be in San Francisco if it's clean and safe. We will come roaring back if government, if your mayor does the basics. And yes, I've talked about how do we incent companies to come back and fill the 22 Salesforce Towers worth of empty office space that we have downtown.
Which is a secular problem, to be fair, across the country.
Yes, and we are the slowest recovery in the nation.
We also had the biggest boom, but sure.
That's fair, and it's not an excuse for how slow our economic recovery is, and I won't use it as an excuse. I will push, I will go recruit companies back. I'll go to New York and recruit companies. When Jamie Dimon is here for the healthcare conference from JP Morgan, you better believe I'm going to meet him and make sure what can I do to keep him here. We need to do that for the RSA conference. I was really glad to see that Mark Benioff said that he would stay here for the next 3 years. That's a win for our city. But next year's conferences look lower than this year's conferences in terms of how many days Moscone Center is booked out. So that's a problem. What people want to see around this country is that San Francisco gets it, that they are changing leadership. Because when you have a 6-year track record like this mayor does, people want to know that San Franciscans are like, okay, it's time to change. The city, the reason I'm getting so much incoming now is because people know that we are leading, we're going to win this race, and that change is coming in November to San Francisco.
I'm just wondering, Kara, you talk to the top tech leaders. I mean, they're on your speed dial.
Yep.
So when you talk to them, do you get the sense that there's anything that would bring them back and have their employees come back all the time and to fill these buildings?
Oh, they're back. They're just pretending not to be back. A lot of them are back, in fact, which is interesting. I think the AI happening in AI is really important, and if we lose that leadership here in San Francisco, it'll be a problem. So how do you you have Sam Altman here with the most important AI company.
Correct.
Arguably. It is the most important AI
Absolutely.
by far. How do you, every San Francisco increase has been around some technology thing. How do you get them to stay here?
You call them and you say, what can I do to make sure that you're happy? Things are going well. This administration, this mayor has failed to do that for years. I understand the importance of making sure that you keep someone like Mark Benioff here, a company that's committed to our city. I talk often about growing up in and around Levi's and how Levi's was committed to this city, committed to its employees. Salesforce is doing the same thing. I'm really hopeful that Sam follows that lead. We have Anthropic, we have Meta, we have Google, both of whom have left the city in reduced, thank you. And we need them back. Now, I don't want us to just go back and say tech is going to save us, because we need to diversify. We can't sell our souls for one industry again. That's why I want to focus on the arts and culture. Our creative class has always led the way in our booms. If you go back in San Francisco history, it's always our creative class. So I want to welcome people back. I want to also create a climate innovation hub and make sure that we once again lead on climate. There are so many things at our disposal. We got Cal and Berkeley, we got UCSF. We have everything. What we don't have is competent leadership inside City Hall.
You have labeled yourself as an outsider in this race, and you are often critical of the city insiders, that you are running against. But, the reality is that if you become mayor, you are going to need people around you who can help you navigate the complexities of the system and how to get bills passed and how all the commissions interact and all these things. So who are you turning to for advice, and who do you plan to hire to help you navigate those things?
I appreciate the question. And going back to you asked about my experience. I have worked with every mayor. I've worked with most of the department heads, whether it was around Super Bowl, whether it was around getting housing built. I know people inside that building. I understand the dysfunction, and I also know the good people that are in there. One of the former planning director under 3 mayors has endorsed me, John Ram. Former Mayor Frank Jordan has endorsed me. I have multiple 30-year commanders and captains of SFPD that have endorsed me from the community. So we have plenty of people that are giving us really good advice. I have a list of people. If I shared them right now, they would be run out of City Hall. So I will keep them covered for now. But we have and are talking to people. But to be quite honest, I am really focused on sprinting through the finish line on November 5th. I have people thinking about and planning what we do starting November 6th. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do on November 6th, day one of our transition, is I'm going to sit down every single one of the major department heads and really going to tell them that they need to re-interview for their jobs. I have other opponents that are telling you all how many people they're going to fire. I don't believe that that's true leadership. There's going to be a lot of changes during the transition period. There's going to be a lot of fresh faces. We need to clean house in some areas of City Hall. We all know that. Even the incumbent has said things like that.
Our final question is one of the hardest ones, because we have a ranked choice voting situation in San Francisco. Yeah. So who's going to be your second choice?
I'm watching my opponents, and they're weathering multiple scandals, pay to play in their past. We have a burgeoning scandal at City Hall with the Human Rights Commission and a direct report to this mayor. We've had corruption inside this City Hall. It's not just with this mayor, but it's gone back now for years. And so I think it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and say anything other than, put me number one. I can make it very easy for your viewers. Put Daniel Lurie number one. And if you like somebody else and you could see them as your mayor, then you can put them 2 or 3. But I've seen these City Hall insiders, and I'm not going to sit here and say put somebody number 2. They've kind of all made deals with each other, and once
but you're doing surprisingly well at number 2, actually. Your polling is quite strong.
Kara, we're doing well at 1s, we're doing well at 2s, we're doing well at 3s. Well, actually, with the level of attacks coming from a sitting mayor, an incumbent mayor directed directly at me, interim mayor directing all of his attacks at me, we know what they're seeing in the numbers. And the numbers that we're all seeing is that we're leading in 1s, 2s, and 3s. We are leading this race. And I am by no means taking anything for granted. We have to sprint. But I have to tell you, I've been sprinting for over a year. We're going to finish as strong as we are right now. We're going to finish even stronger, and we're going to win this election. And I have to tell you, I'm all in, and I'm humbly asking your viewers to put me #1 on November 5th.
And we're going to leave it there. To hear what all the candidates are saying about these important topics, please go to our website, abc7news.com/sfmayor. Also, go to the San Francisco Standard, and of course, listen to the podcast On with Kara Swisher. Daniel Lurie, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, you three.